Man, the gold bugs are not going to like this video. The top is in for gold.
You serious?
Bitcoin's next leg up is just beginning. And I'm going to explain why using a slew of charts. So stay tuned for the end because that is going to be probably the most convincing chart out of all of these to prove my thesis or opinion on why the run is over for gold and Bitcoin's might actually just be beginning.
Are you stupid or something?
The main point here that I'm trying to show with this chart is that gold generally leads Bitcoin by about 8 to 9 months. The correlation here is pretty stark. Now, just a footnote on correlations, they're not always going to work. There's going to be periods of decorrelation, like you can see here during 2022, and there's varying factors and reasons for this, but generally gold tends to sniff out real yield turns, meaning 10-year bond yields, with the Fed beginning to cut last month and will be continuing to cut in terms of the probabilities. Gold sniffs out those pivots first. Bitcoin, as sort of the higher beta monetary asset, usually lags the signal, but magnifies the move once liquidity broadens. People generally front run Fed rate cuts. They sell into that strength, and it takes a while for that liquidity to actually hit the system and give you positive returns on higher beta assets like Bitcoin, things that are down the curve. It's basically a risk rotation. After a gold peak, which I think is currently happening, you saw all those pictures of people lining up to buy gold all around the world. I mean, if that isn't a top signal, then I don't know what is. But once that peak happens, capital more often than not rotates down the risk curve into assets with a higher elasticity to liquidity, and that's Bitcoin. And that really shows up in chart number 2 here, which is the Bitcoin to gold ratio on a monthly. So you can see here, it's just BTC divided by gold on a 1-month time frame. So this is very zoomed out so that I can show kind of the direction that this is going, right? For all my technical analysis experts, analysts out there,
Nice.
It's pretty clear to see that we have a rising wedge here. BTC Gold has kind of knocked at the door on this top level here multiple times over the past 3-4 years. And when this finally breaks, that's when you will see a ton of Bitcoin outperformance. A lot of this move for the last year has been driven really by the dollar softening. So as the dollar softens, that loosens global financial conditions because generally all of the world's debt is monetized in the DXY. Gold usually catches the first bid when that happens. As conditions continue loosening, which they are now, Bitcoin generally ends up playing catch up and then outpaces. And again, this is a monthly chart, so this is going to take time to roll through the system and really see some positive outperformance. But I think when this neckline up here breaks, that's when we're really going to see some stark moves. For the last and final chart, and probably the most convincing in my opinion, because you've seen this happen multiple times before here in 2015, in 2018, in 2020, and in 2022. And now it's happening again in 2025. This bottom panel is basically showing you this ratio, but z-scored. And when the z-score standard deviation hits -3, which is this red line here on the bottom, and begins to reverse, that is when Bitcoin outperforms over the next quarter to a year. And you can see that in the history. In the 2015 cycle, it went up 12,000%. We had another pump in 2019 that went 275%. 2020, we had 1,300% outperformance. And then more recently in 2022 to 2023, we had a 259% outperformance by Bitcoin itself. And I think we are just starting to see the initial signs of this. Now, percentage wise, do I think we're going to hit anything like these numbers? Absolutely not. but I wouldn't be surprised if we get a 50 to 120% move going into Q2, Q3 of 2026. Everyone has been calling for a cycle top here in Bitcoin because X days have gone by. And historically, when X days have gone by, I think it's about 1,050, something like that. Since the halving or since the beginning of the cycle, that's it. Pack it up. It's over.
Stop it. Get some help.
In my opinion, people are going to be dramatically sidelined on this next move. I post videos about this every Friday when I do my Bitcoin macro war room review. And my thesis is that this cycle is going to be extended and we are going to run into 2026 fairly heavily. And with sentiment being in the dumps, that just makes me even more bullish. I hope these charts helped. If you want to think about how this could be invalidated, well, I think it's pretty simple, right? This continues to bleed in terms of the ratio, and this continues to go down on a week over week basis. So you can keep an eye on BTC divided by gold. And if this does not outperform or is still showing continual weakness, then this whole thesis is invalidated. But in my opinion, gold has had an insane run this year, an almost unprecedented run in terms of how high of an asset cap market this is. This move has been absolutely incredible, nothing short of incredible. I mean, that is a 84% rip for gold, which historically has been a lower volatility debasement hedge. It's really propelled this year with the debasement trade catching eyeballs and a ton of sentiment behind it. However, I think at this point, this has topped. I'm not saying that gold is over and that it's not going to go higher. This entire hypothesis is based of the fact that gold has currently topped and for the next 6 to 9 to 12 months is not going to outperform. I would be remiss not to think that we would not retest this area here. I think that's probably a given, although high time frame 5 years out from now, I still think gold is going higher. Global banks are not going to stop debasing their currency. They're not going to be able to pay off their debts. They are going to try and print their way out. And that is going to re-accelerate inflation and all the other things that we've already been through on sort of a smaller scale post 2022. So gold still goes higher long term, but I think currently in the immediate future, we have topped. And I'd be surprised if Bitcoin, being the higher beta asset, doesn't outperform going forward into 2026. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed the charts and I hope you enjoyed this analysis. If you did, definitely check out my show that I drop every Friday morning, which is a weekly recap of my system, data releases, and where we're headed. Should we be risk on or risk off? Regardless, if you made it with me this far, I really appreciate you sticking around and watching. Thank you so much. If you did like the video, you know what to do. I'm not even going to ask you for it. And as always, I'll see you next time. Cheers.